good? You good? All right. We'll call this meeting to order. It's 6 p.m. on July 15th, 2026. Everyone is here and accounted for except Melissa. I had not heard from her, so maybe she'll be here in a minute. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item 4 is consideration of the agenda. Does anyone on the council want to adjust anything relative to this simple agenda tonight? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
That was Susan, motion, Rich, second. All those in favor of approving the agenda as posted?
Aye.
I believe that is unanimous. Item 5 is consideration of consent agenda. That's 5A through E. They will be considered, these items are considered routine by the Dune City Council, will be enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items unless it's desired to remove an item for discussion. Does anybody have anything they need to pull or want to discuss or have a question before we approve those?
I just have a question about Amazon expenditures.
Yes, sir.
And I'm familiar with QuickBooks, and I realize that we buy a lot of things from Amazon, I buy a lot of things from Amazon. Do you, when you're doing this reconciliation, do you know what these are in terms of whether or not they're office expenses or?
I do, I keep the receipts, and if you have a price, I might remember it offhand. If
Oh, I just, all I'm asking about is the process.
Yes.
So as long as we're reconciling what comes from Amazon, because everything else you can tell, charter's charter, you know, Lane Council of Governments, you know, you can tell what things are, but when Amazon
Right.
is the supplier, it's hard to tell what we're getting. The same thing would apply like if we had Home Depot or, who knows?
Yes, sir, we get the receipt, and then we attach it to the monthly bank statement and say,
That's perfect. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, could I get a motion to approve consent agenda?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone want a second?
second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving consent agenda?
Aye.
All right, item 6, announcements and correspondence. James.
Yeah, I have a few things. For STR permits, there was a new STR permit issued early last month before the new process came out, and so it was done before they had their DEQ. Pretty confident that will be the last one. I've contacted the homeowners and let them know the past issues people have had when they advertise for a certain number and they get 200 days worth of reservations, and then DEQ comes down and says that's half that. So they're under construction now, I believe, is that correct?
They're doing repairs,
Doing repairs now
and they do have all their paperwork in.
for DEQ as well? Oh, good. Okay, scratch that. STR violations, there's one property with 2 violations on file and 2 pending violations. The property owners were notified that their appeal right was to the next council meeting, which had been today. They were abroad and asked that we postpone it. I initially denied that request because I couldn't find anything in the STR ordinance that would allow me to postpone it. But then in doing more research, I found something in the code enforcement ordinance that when you are issued a violation, you are allowed a one-time 30-day postponement to the council. So I've notified them of that, and they plan to appeal both violations at the meeting on August 19th, just to keep you all up to date.
So, Mike, can I ask you a
Yes,
question?
sir?
So, these were violations issued by our code enforcement officer.
Correct.
Right, so they're disputing his determination that there was a violation.
That's correct.
Right. So, when we have a certain number of violations, do we not just retract their short-term permit?
But they still have an opportunity to address the violations and to appeal them before they're counted against them. The first 2, they did not do that. These last 2, they have.
Okay, so they have 4, is that what you're saying?
They have 4 total, 2 of which have already been, filed, right?
Okay.
And then there are 2 more that are pending.
So 3 is when they're out?
Correct.
Okay, so they're going to appeal that, and you've given them a 30-day extension, so we expect to see them sometime in the next 30 days,
We expect to see them on August 19th.
August 19th. Okay, and that's a council meeting day.
That's correct.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You're welcome. On the,
Well, and to clarify, so if those stand, then they would be more than 3 violations, and there could be a revocation. And if council decides that they should, they win the appeal, for lack of a better term, then they'd be at 2 violations and,
Well, I understand, but
Right.
I mean, if the violations stand, then it's automatic. They're gonna have their permit.
we have the option to, which we will send a
Well,
revocation.
That's
So
the ordinance. The ordinance is 3 and you're out.
They could suspend as well. The ordinance, I think, gives a couple of different options, but I have the revocation papers ready so that if they do lose the appeal, that we're ready to move forward.
Okay. I don't see anything optional in that process. It's 3 strikes and you're out. So if they're not successful with their appeal, or if they are successful with their appeal, we can move ahead. But I don't want to have a moving goalpost here where we have no consequences for people who have violations.
Understood. On the Murphy STR refund request, I heard from them yesterday that he will provide some documentation supporting his position, and he'll do that next week. So that if I have that, I'll write a staff report recommending that we refund if it's compelling evidence and bring it to council for a vote. And that will also be on the agenda for this August 5th
August 5th,
agenda.
first meeting on
It's the first one.
Okay, so I have a question about
Yes, sir.
that too. You know, you're our city manager. You know, if you make a decision on your own that you see substantial reason to refund their money, I don't speak for everybody here, but I would expect you to go ahead and act.
I couldn't because the ordinance says that you shall not receive refunds. It doesn't say unless the city administrator deems
Right.
otherwise.
Right.
So that would be about, you all can change your own ordinance, but I can't do that for you.
I understand. But did we not receive a legal opinion about that?
I don't recall any of that.
Yeah, that it could come to council.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I think there was something about extraordinary circumstance.
Yes, but either case, that has to be done by council, not by
Okay,
me.
very good,
Right.
that's fine, but let's talk about a different perspective here. Not everything needs to come to us.
Not everything, absolutely.
Right.
But when it doesn't, sometimes people object to that.
True, and then they can object and appeal to us.
Sure.
So we don't want you to have to take everything to us
Absolutely,
if you think it's prudent to act.
absolutely. And if the ordinance didn't forbid me from doing it, I would have done so already.
Gotcha, okay, very good, thank you.
You're welcome. The 25-26 budget, the preliminary data, I haven't had a chance to go through and really close out the books yet on it, but it shows that there's no discrepancy in the reconciliation balance between what the bank has and what we show. So that's a good sign. And we're about $6,000 under budget for the year. And at the
For the last fiscal year.
for the last fiscal year. And so at the second meeting in August, if you'd like, I can give you some documentation in a memo that says what we're spending most of it on, where we're getting most of it from, things of that nature. Okay?
And then I have one more thing I'd like to ask you
Yes, sir.
with respect. If you'll check with Lila, she had prepared an ending fund balance summary of the different accounts we have.
Mhm.
It was added to the financials, I don't see that here.
It's not because I haven't had the opportunity to figure out how she is doing that.
Okay, that's fine.
But moving forward for this fiscal year, it'll be on there. So.
Excellent, thank you.
And then the last thing was, Councilor Farnsworth, after last meeting, asked to review the correspondence between the mayor and our city attorney. So I reached out to our city attorney, who we contract through with LCOG. He said that he would have to check with the State Bar Ethics Commission because it wasn't something he had been familiar with before. He's since done so informally and said that everybody is entitled on council to see that, but I haven't received the official opinion from that yet. Once I get that, I'll schedule a executive session so all of you can see the documents together, and it remains privileged then. Okay? Question?
And is that a topic we can do as executive session? Because there's specific things we can have in executive session.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure that.
I'll double check, but
Okay.
yes. Otherwise, we'd lose privilege if it was in the open session.
Yeah, that would be the question is, what do you do, or, is it a here's your version to read, now you have to give it back and you do it individually.
And that was
I don't know how you
the
do
attorney suggestion that we do it in executive,
Okay.
so I'll just
Oh.
find the appropriate
All right.
section. And that was all I had, sir.
Well, I would add one more.
Yes, sir.
So, in the context of the attorney and the mayor communicating by email, apparently the mayor was able to receive privileged information by email. Could not the entire council have received that same email?
Yes.
Okay, so then maybe there's no need for an executive session.
I'll have to wait for his
Right,
opinion, but you might be right.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, that was it for me, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Item 7 is citizens input. This is public comment period for things not on the agenda. I have one request to speak from Della on short-term rentals. I think this would be the time to do that.
Not like talking in front of people, but we're gonna do like this. Okay. Okay, so this is coming from me, y'all know me, I'm Della with West Coast Destinations, day-to-day operations of the short-term rentals here in Dune City. So this is coming from the owners of most of those short-term rentals and other short-term rentals that this is all gonna affect as well. So, Mayor and members of the council, my name is Della. Most of you already know I work directly with the including the property on Russell Drive that has generated many of the concerns and issues that have already been discussed. I'm here on behalf of all my owners here in Dune City. I'm not here to deny that there was a problem, because there was. The property's occupancy and guest activity created understandable frustration for the neighbor living across the street. Linda, and I want you to know that we heard those concerns and we've taken them seriously and acted on them. We have made substantial changes at this property, and I'm gonna go through this. The maximum occupancy has been reduced to 9 guests. Guest access to the lake has been determined to be, we gotta figure out a way that they can get down there or eliminate it completely. Quiet hours are being heavily enforced. We also reviewed the reservations already scheduled for July and August and canceled all those reservations that exceeded the new 9-person limit. There were 10 total. This was a substantial loss to the owner and also to Dune City. These were not merely promises about what we might do in the future. They were immediate and costly actions taken to correct the situation. To the best of my knowledge, since these changes were implemented, there have been no additional complaints. I believe Igor can confirm that. Okay, I believe that it is important because it demonstrates a specific problem can be addressed with specific management and enforcement. Now, going forward, we believe that the proposed ballot measure goes much further. It would impose requirements on every existing permitted short-term rental, including properties that have not generated any complaints at all, and owners who have followed the city's rules, again, something that I am sure that Igor can confirm. The resident on-site host requirement would make continued operation impossible for many of the currently permitted properties, also making them what is considered in Oregon as bed and breakfast, which would be a business. That is not a targeted correction. It is a citywide consequence arising largely from problems associated with one property. We're not asking the council or neighboring residents to tolerate disruptive behavior. We will support firm occupancy limits, quiet hour enforcement, prompt responses to complaints, meaningful penalties, and the loss of permit when a property repeatedly refuses to comply. But before Dune City adopts a measure that could eliminate many responsible and compliant rentals, I respectfully ask everyone to consider what has changed. The immediate problem has been addressed. The management company has demonstrated that it is willing to act on this. I respectfully ask the chief petitioners to reconsider whether this ballot measure is still necessary. If a lawful method remains to withdraw, we ask that you please consider doing so. If withdrawal is no longer possible, I ask that we work together on a more focused solution and allow voters to know that the circumstances that led to this measure have drastically changed. We heard the concerns, we took responsibility to make real changes. Please give those changes an opportunity to work before imposing permanent consequences on every responsible short-term runner in Dune City. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other yellow cards?
No, sir.
Anyone else want to speak during citizens input? All right, seeing none, we'll go to item 8, reports. Really, the only thing I have is 4th of July. I think the pie eating / watermelon eating contest was a huge success. We had 16 volunteers. Chris and Amber Clemens and their daughter Lily, Larry Farnsworth, Susan and Alan Snow, Duke, Lila and Eric, James, myself and Lori, John Caldwell, and Jim Mitchell was our MC, and then Becky and Linda, our employees, also volunteered for part of that time and came out. And from a debrief perspective, I think there's a couple things, if we do this again next year, we could simplify. Our sign-up form was a bit complicated. That's something that the Habitat for Humanity used in the past, and they were collecting more information than we needed because they were adding people to their email list and that sort of thing, and they did a fundraiser in association with the event. We spent way too much time collecting information that we had no intent on using. And the other is, I was told they downsized to 18 per age group, and Jim, the MC, this was his 9th year. And he said, I don't remember that. I remember doing 24 in every age group, but we could have easily filled 24 and maybe even 30 per age group. And we had enough watermelons and pies, to do up to probably 30 in an age group if we wanted
I don't think we could have done 30, but we could have done 24.
to. Easy, because we ended up with a lot of pie and watermelon.
I wouldn't say easy in terms of the
Yeah.
supplies we had, not in terms of the
Right.
elbow grease for
Yes.
cutting them all.
And we, I think another table with 2 people cutting and.
Right.
Right, I think we could speed up a few things. But anyway, it was a great success. I think everybody had a good time. We got pictures with all the winners. I don't have any of them. We were handing out medals and a certificate, so anyway, we'll try to collect those photos and get them in the newsletter for August. But I'll reach out to the Chamber of Commerce. They advertised it, but it's actually a port activity. They were just helping find a volunteer, so. Unless there's an objection, they're going to email me at some point and say, are you interested in doing it again? So if they email, I'll say, yes, I think it was a lot of fun. So, all right, that's all I have.
And we have postcards going out to our donors to thank you for allowing it to be, because it was a fairly expensive endeavor as well, and it would have been possible without you. But we had some computer issues, and so they've been a little bit late going out.
James, could you tell us, what did it cost for the event?
I don't know the exact number. It was probably a little over $1,000, but I'd have to double check. Some of that could have been mitigated because we overbought on pies and watermelons. I got watermelons for 59 cents a pound, or 59 cents per watermelon. They're 59 cents a pound, so that added up pretty quick.
And James had to move them all multiple times.
Yeah, next year we'll get somebody younger to move water.
Hundreds of pounds of watermelon.
I enjoyed the event, and I want to thank all the volunteers. Susan was over there cutting watermelon, and I thought she was going to cut herself. She was,
I didn't.
you were just doing the,
And Cree cut the pies too, right?
I cut all the pie.
Yeah.
What was the count, do you know how many people attended?
Well, there were probably 250 in line when the sign-up started, but there were a lot of parents and just family
Bystanders.
cheering. Yeah, because everybody under 18 had to have a parent to sign the form.
Wow.
So we ended up with 18 in each age group, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 and up. And 2 of those, we had 20 kids in. There was a couple of kids that were waiting in line and somebody else got signed up. And I said, oh, my kid's been waiting. So we had 2 more, I think, both in pie and watermelon in the middle age group, if you will, the 10, 11, 12, 13 year
Wow.
olds. So 20, 40, there was about 100 eating and then another at least 100 plus cheering them on.
Good job.
Yeah, so it was pretty good. I mean, I heard one complaint. There was one mom that was like, my kid's been waiting in line, my kid didn't get a piece of pie, and the person that was doing the sign-up says, then I hope you'll volunteer next year. Which I thought was a pretty good answer.
Fast thinking.
Yeah, so, and that's the couple of kids we added. We made space, we made sure, and there were 2 spots that we had 18 set up and there were only 16 names, and so we got 2 more, there were 2 more girls that were standing there in front of the line that had been waiting. And I made them pinky promise that they wouldn't choke on anything because we didn't have a waiver and they were less than 18. So we winged it.
as a suggestion, rather than having everybody in one big line.
yeah.
I'd maybe put a little sign up that says age group, age group, age group.
And we could probably do pie to one side,
Yeah.
watermelon to the other side or something, yeah.
Just not putting everybody in one big line.
Yeah.
That's it.
It was a mob scene. I went through the line and said, if you're waiting for pie, go around, because 2/3 of them were waiting for watermelon and all the pie people were behind them, and so, yeah, it's a good suggestion.
And Jim was trying to announce who was
It
open.
was a lot bigger group standing there than I expected, frankly, so, good suggestion. And then there are 2 reports in the back of your packet for building permits and complaints. If you have any questions, we've got both Ken and Igor sitting here.
And the building permits is really short because we're changing it to where we go from the first of the month to the first of the month instead of the 15th to the 15th.
Is there any update on the subdivision that's being planned over in
No.
Duke's neighborhood? No updates at all?
No,
I saw some bulldozer activity over there. Are they trying to figure out a second egress?
I don't know. I know they're still clearing underbrush.
Okay.
So when they're clearing, does that not rise to the level of grading permit because they're not moving earth?
They have a grading permit.
Oh, they do have a grading permit.
Need a building permit for 100 yards or more, right?
50, I think 50, over 50,
They've got one for over that.
yeah. But I mean, if that's what triggers it, over 50 is a
I
grading
think that's
permit.
where this starts to break.
Okay.
But they're not actually moving dirt. They're just basically mowing and,
I think they're trying to see what the terrain is.
yeah, that was a big thing in the beginning because they knew that one back in toward Peninsula was really steep. And they got that creek down there and they got to find out what it's going to cost them to try to punch a road through there.
Yeah. Well, I went hiking over there. I think it's, I'm not an engineer, but it looks like there could be a practical way to, I mean, I like the expense, but it seems like there's a possibility there that might be good for everybody in that
Yep.
area.
And it'll be a second way out of that whole area over there.
A second way out, for whatever reason.
Because there is not one.
Fire, whatever it is.
Any other questions or comments on the permit report or the code enforcement report? Seeing none, there's no old business or new business introduced. We'll go to item 11, public hearing. This is July 15th. Land use file PAPA 25-01. This is a type 4 legislative amendment to chapter 155 of the Dune City Development Code. If approved, the amendments will be adopted via ordinance number 275. The Planning Commission recommended approval and adoption of the amendments with revisions as noted. The City Council is reconvening this public hearing tonight to continue the hearing from July 1st. The hearing is now open and oral and written comments will be accepted. We'll open the hearing at 6:24. And last meeting, we left off at 155.2.4, the fragile lands overlay.
Are we asking for input at this point?
Sure. Is it,
It's related to 275.
okay,
What page are we on, sorry?
approximately 74. Depending on which version you printed, it's 74, 75. Go ahead, Geneva.
2 questions. Will Administrator Divis be posting a clean, completely updated copy of Ordinance 275 that includes all the changes the council has agreed to prior to an attempt to vote on it as required by Dune City's Charter's mode of enactment? The document is very different at this point and will be more different as we move forward. So I'm thinking that's important.
The answer is yes to that.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, 2. Will the tree coverage maps requirements that appeared in 3 places in Chapter 155 but are crossed out in Ordinance 275 return? The mayor stated earlier that tree maps would be better located in Chapter 155, and the council was previously scheduled to do so. Chapter 154.
Yeah, 154.
Chapter 154 is no longer scheduled on current agendas. The mayor indicated that Chapter 154 would not be reviewed until after the revision of 275. This is concerning.
I think that's my recommendation, because 155 covers erosion, and the 3 locations were mapping only. They weren't triggered, there was nothing triggered with a building permit. And so my recommendation, at least at this point, the recommendation from the planning commission was to remove them from this section. And after having that discussion, I think we'd like to have them somewhere else where they would actually, the trees would be flagged and counted on a site plan with building permit instead of just at the time of mapping, because that has no jurisdiction
my
requirements
concern
after the
too.
map's recorded.
But I am concerned about looking to 154, because you're going to have to change that a bunch, because currently that would not be the place for it to go. So those are just my comments.
Okay. And 154 is a lot shorter, if that helps. I mean, it shouldn't take nearly as many meetings as this chapter, but I appreciate the comments.
Could I add something to that?
Please.
Part of the concern and part of the reason why our citizens want us to go through this code is exactly the reason that Geneva has mentioned, is tree coverage. So it would seem to me that if we were going to get to a conclusion on this particular code and present it to the public, okay, these are all the changes we've made, give them a clean copy to look at. Before we vote on this, I'd also like to see the tree coverage issue addressed in 154 so that they know that what was taken out of here isn't just going into hyperspace and disappearing, because it's important. It was important as part of this code. I'd like to see it reviewed as a package. So 154 and 155 are very complementary to each other. So I'd kind of like to see us, because otherwise people will read that as just, all right, you took all the tree coverage out and now it's the wild, wild west. So my thought is, I know I want to get through this code. I want to get through this.
Me too.
Yeah, but when you take a large question mark about our trees, and let's face it, trees are a big deal here in Dune City. It seems to me like if we're going to take it out of here and say, yeah, we're going to put it over here, well, that's a promise that's made but not kept until we actually have something that's in writing that we can vote on, maybe at the same meeting. It's just my thought.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of chicken and egg.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is.
We're in the middle of 155, and that's why we added it to the agenda. If you would like, I mean, this is up to the whole council, we can take a pause on 155. We can continue it to any future meeting, our hearing, not tonight, and put 154 back on here and have the discussion about 154 and see if there's an easy fit. Because frankly,
I would suggest we just finish 155. Let's get through
and I think
this.
that's why we took it off. We had it at the bottom of the agenda a couple times, and we're not anywhere close to finishing 155. It wasn't like it was going to come up that night, so.
Well, my suggestion is to finish 155
Okay.
and get it to a final published copy, but not vote on it until we finish 154, and then vote on both of them side by side.
Okay.
That way people know, yeah, it's covered over here, it's taken out of here. We can finish our work in good order on
Okay.
155, and then we'll do 154, and that gives everybody a chance to see that, okay, what was here was moved over here, and, it's not missing or gone forever.
And I think the tree stuff specifically needs more specificity.
It does.
It said, show the trees, but it was when you were mapping property, not when you were developing property. It was the later, when you pulled a building permit, we realized that you could cut all the same trees. You just had to show them at the time of mapping.
Right.
I don't think it had the complete effect we wanted, so.
Right.
All right, so,
Keeping in
good
mind, we'll
comment.
have to change our agenda because we stated that right after this, we would go back to the SDR and revisit that.
We've got that on our list too.
Yeah, we do. We've got a full plate.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you take it out of here and say, yeah, we're gonna get to it down the road, well, that's scary for people.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, I was counting on this, and you said you were gonna do it, but you didn't do it, and then you went to STRs, and it's like, well, okay, we should do these two as a package.
Okay. All right. Any other comments before we get to the fragile lands? If not, we're at fragile lands overlay, the FL zone. Any comments on the purpose statement? If not, there's quite a bit of word changes in the excessive slopes, which has been simplified, 15% or greater, instead of having a 12 to 16 and a 16 and greater. Anything over 15 requires erosion and sediment control plan, submitted by a licensed engineer and approved prior to issuance of building permit. Yes, go ahead with Funzel.
I just have one comment. Under paragraph B, in Gary Darnell's review, he made a recommendation to slightly change that verbiage. He recommended saying that all uses allowed outright and those allowed conditionally. Are allowed in excessive slopes, except that.
I got you. The first sentence in B.
Talking about 110B?
Yes, now it's 110, yes, B. So it would read, all uses allowed outright and those allowed conditionally
Correct.
shall be allowed in the underlying zone. Let's see. However Gary wrote it, yeah. I'm going to read two sentences.
Rapunzel, would any of the existing sentence be eliminated?
Hold on a second.
Is it just trying to get that in between now?
I think so.
Under Lansing, is that what he's?
Right, those allowed outright and those allowed conditionally. That's, I think, all we got to add
Just
is.
an insert.
So it should say all uses allowed outright and those allowed conditionally are allowed in excessive slopes except that.
Got it.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments on excessive slopes?
I had a question on the 15%, where that comes from. The comp plan has a couple different slope numbers that it uses, like anything from 12 to 16 requires a site review, and anything more than 16 requires engineering review.
Right.
15 is just in the middle. I don't know if that's coming from some other documentation, if there's a reason why it's 15 and not 16.
Rapunzel, do you know?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Why is it 15%?
So I think that we settled on 15% because it was the most, at the most extreme end that would require engineering, and simplified the language so that we don't have to determine between 12 and 15.
Okay, I think the comp plan says more than
It
16
does.
requires.
It does.
Okay. So
It's a
it's,
slight deviation.
Okay, so would you recommend bringing the comp plan in line with 15 in the future?
Probably, yes.
Okay. That answers my question. So 15 is where we want to be, and we're
Okay.
doing this first.
Okay. Next section is 120, stabilized or active dunes.
Could I just ask, before we go to 120?
Yeah.
Paragraph C, all conditional uses allowed in the underlying zone are allowed.
From the Office of Redundancy.
Yeah, that's what I mean, didn't we just add that to B?
Because
Didn't
we
we
just
just say?
put added conditional uses there.
Gotcha. Right, so we say it in B, we don't need to say it again.
We can just
Scratch
scratch out C.
Other than it's consistent with the formatting of all the other usage.
Oh, the other paragraph?
Yeah, and I think in other places. we
Conditional
have-
uses is one of our paragraph headers.
I think it's pretty consistently
Yeah.
when we talk about these are allowed.
It doesn't hurt to leave it, I guess.
Gotcha, allowed uses and then conditional uses.
I think that's our standard that we.
I think you're right.
It is redundant.
Yeah, only for consistency's sake, not because it provides any clarification.
So if we're going to keep them both in, do we have to add allowed and conditional under allowed uses since we have conditional uses? Because we have to keep both of them, so
That's a good question. That was the professional planner's recommendation, but it is redundant.
And the exception would apply to conditional uses as well. And if we keep it as separate, but we don't mention it in B, then it sounds like that exception only applies to allowed but not conditional uses. You know what I mean?
I'm just saying, we say in conditional, do we have to put it in allowed?
Yeah, but then we would want to add that same except to C, so that the exception for 15% is both allowed and exceptional, or exception.
I'm not talking about the 15%.
So it says all conditional uses allowed in the underlying zone are allowed. Maybe just all conditional uses in the underlying zone are allowed. Drop one of the allows, please. It's like saying you're allowed to be allowed.
Right. In C, you're talking about removing the first allowed in
Yes.
C.
And then,
Yeah.
I'd get rid of the whole sentence, but if we're gonna stay consistent with other sections, as Chris suggests, I'd say, okay, leave it in there, but take out the first allowed.
I like that. And then our formats is consistent, but the sentence makes more sense.
Does that separation imply that the 15% does not apply to conditional uses? That exception?
Because it's only stated above.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at B, it says allowed uses, all allowed uses under underlying zone are allowed in excessive slopes except that. And then it states the development of 15%, so it'd have to follow the 15%, right? No matter what.
Or if you go greater than 15%, you have to have, you have to meet the requirements.
Yeah.
I think it's saying, I think it reads well.
All right, we good to go to 120?
Is council in agreement then that we'll keep section C and only eliminate the first uses in between conditional and allowed? Is that correct?
We're gonna remove just the first allowed
Allowed.
word.
First allowed, okay, thank you.
All conditional uses in the underlying zone are allowed.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. All right, 155.2.4.120, stabilized or active dunes. And we have the B and the C are similar, allowed uses.
Take
And, yeah, conditional, all conditional uses allowed in the underlying zone are allowed, so take out the first allowed again.
So I have one question about this section, where it talks about sand stabilizing surface vegetation. Well, who was it that brought us dune grass? They did that because they wanted to stabilize the dunes, and now it's a blight.
Invasive species,
You're
yeah.
pulling back.
Right, so, I would say that in this particular paragraph, it would be a good idea for us to specify that they need to tell us what surface vegetation they're gonna use for sand stabilization. What are you gonna put in there? What is it that you're gonna put in that's gonna stabilize the sand?
I think this is the opposite. It's those lands where development will destroy sand stabilizing surface vegetation. So it's existing vegetation that you would be
Right.
removing, regrade. Because on private property,
Well, it says you have to prepare a plan to revegetate.
yeah,
So what I would,
no, that's
what I don't want them to do is revegetate with,
invasive species.
right,
The Scotch broom.
yeah.
And European dune grass or whatever that's called.
Well, all you have to do at the end of this, I think it's B, city shall require the applicant to prepare a plan to revegetate damaged areas with approved vegetation to negate erosion potential caused by the proposed development.
Yeah.
Where are we coming up with approved vegetation?
Well, that's up to the planning staff to determine what you, they just have to tell you. They will tell you, what are you
It's,
gonna plant?
I think it's similar to the riparian habitat. There's environmental folks and
Right.
engineers that do that around here. They'll
Right.
tell you these 10 species will satisfy that.
Yeah.
And these 6, you shouldn't plant.
So do we need a list that they should?
No, I don't think you need
No,
to list
they're
them,
here.
just an approved plan. I'm with Larry. I think if you say approved plan, they gotta go to a environmental or, those people that do that.
Because otherwise, people are gonna say, yeah, the dune grass is doing it.
Yeah. I got a bag of crabgrass seeds.
Should we say something about native species and?
Good question. Because I think the details are in 154, not to bring that up again, but I think the erosion control chapter, we should be more specific there. The guidance on what would be in there, I think we should get in all those specifics there. And if there's a state list or a county list or something, we could reference that here's approved planting list or something like that.
So I would propose we just add the words with approved vegetation and let them present to our
Yeah.
planning
I like
department what that is and how they've determined it.
So, excuse me.
Yes.
So the planning commission wouldn't know what's approved vegetation and what isn't. But a landscape engineer type of person, whatever you would call
Right.
that authority, would. And that would be the person who's submitting the revegetation plan.
Right.
So perhaps, to make it easier for everybody, there should be a sentence in here saying something like, revegetation plan approved by a certified whatever that type of person is.
Right.
So
Prepared
that
by.
when all the documentation comes to, first of all, staff, and then planning commission, and then council, everyone knows that that particular aspect of revegetation has been approved by a certified landscaper. Same as with submitting engineering plans. Those are all done before the plans proceed for approval.
Agreed.
I just don't know what you call that person, sorry.
Yeah, I know when we were doing riparian habitat research, there were like 3 different titles listed. There's environmental technologist for something that the state recognizes, and there's a class and an exam, or landscape architect, or environmental engineer.
So
We can
the-
look up in our
there's-
records and see who it was that we have on our list.
Here's some names: restoration ecologist, revegetation specialist, ecological restoration specialist, even a botanist or a plant ecologist or a native plant specialist, a wetland restoration specialist, a landscape ecologist. Why don't we just use that?
Could we say qualified?
Yeah,
Qualified.
or
Qualified
equal, something like that.
professional.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll leave that to, if you're getting a plan, who is it and how are they?
I think we can leave
How are
it
they
to the
qualified?
planning commission to determine the veracity of what's submitted.
Right.
Yeah.
Counselor, what was the last title you had?
Landscape ecologist.
You sure we don't need native in there? Because I don't want
How about,
any of these people saying that things that like Scotch broom or the grasses are approved because they work well, but they're not native.
how about if we say native plant specialist or landscape ecologist? Is that good?
Scotch broom would never be put on there because it's an invasive species by the state of Oregon.
Well, I know it is, but we're saying a specialist could do the plan. We don't know what that specialist is going to do, so we'd like to make sure that they only approve native species.
Yeah. I like Susan's idea that we simply say, you know, landscape ecologist. You could say landscape ecologist using native plant species or something like that, right?
That would be good. I want to make sure that they understand they can't use that
Right.
stuff.
We don't need cactus here, probably.
There are some natives, there's a few. I just leaned on the speech. Sorry,
As opposed to like an orange.
I gotta go. Anything else in, that is, well, it's only B. Now, it was B1, but now it's just B. Part of B. Anything else there? And then C is the same, all conditional uses in the underlying zone are allowed.
Could we drop the word allowed?
Yeah. Strike the first allowed. That takes us to 155.2.5 wetlands overlay zone. So there are not enormous revisions in this section, and it is a statewide plan goal 5. So a lot of this is done state and countywide. So there are references to the wetlands inventory map and the Oregon Department of State Lands and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So a lot of this is just updating our code to reference the current.
So I just have one question about this. This section, generally speaking, in the context of development, there have been some situations where development intruded on a wetland, but the developer was able to offer an offset of restoring some other area, not even in that area, but some other area as wetland habitat. Because sometimes a subdivision or a group of homes or something can't practically be built because there's something that has wetland. And so the case that I'm familiar with, I looked at the state wetlands map, and there are places that I would never assess as wetland that the state has assessed as wetland. And when asked how they made that determination, they said, well, we did an aerial survey. And it didn't even include an inventory of wetlands, grasses, or plants. It was just, we flew over the area and we decided that this big area is a wetland, so it prevents development. But be that as it may, the person who's trying to do the development then goes and does a wetland survey. So they hire an expert to come out to see if the state map is correct. And if the state map isn't correct, the state will accept a wetland expert's analysis of the area. Okay, let's say that the state map isn't correct, but there is some wetland. The developer is then given the option of saying, okay, I'd like to intrude into this wetland area if approved by the planning commission. And as a quid pro quo, I'm gonna go over here to this area that's been neglected and is filled with tires and junk people have dumped there. And I will clean all that up and get it restored as a wetlands area. And sometimes that has been a good way to accomplish two goals. And what I'm seeing here is it's just kind of black or white. It's just saying, no, we're not gonna do it. We're not gonna, will not include any grading, excavation, or filling of wetland or reduction of wetland area on a parcel. So the only thing I would suggest is that we have some kind of process that I think is being used in other areas where, you know, if you're looking at, you know, a neighborhood, in the neighborhood, let's say the access off of Canary Road or something crossed some small area of wetland, that they'd have to fill to create an access road or something. That would stymie the entire development of the site because there was a little bit of wetland at the beginning. So maybe the developer could say, okay, well, give me a project. What do you want fixed here? Somewhere else. So what I don't see something like that in this section. Not that it happens very often, but I am familiar with a subdivision in Florence that had exactly that situation. And they did fill wetlands areas, you know, seasonal dunes and, you know, areas that, and in some cases what they did was actually to improve the mitigation of potential flooding of homes they were building. So it seemed practical.
So I agree. I don't think that is a city level program. I believe it is, like in the definitions, the Oregon Freshwater Wetlands Assessment Methodology is through the Oregon Department of State Lands, and I think it's the state that manages that, and you can make that application. And the FEMA regs that were afoot last year at this time change the mitigation, but that very program exists today.
So,
And the proposal was to make it like mitigation was 4-to-1, but I think currently you're right, it's like 1-to-1.
right.
You disturb 100 square feet over here and you can fix 101 square feet over there and provide your mitigation.
So that being said, I would simply add a sentence here that says, unless, I mean, this says you can't do it at all. So I would say you can't do it at all unless you go through an approved mitigation program by the Division of State Lands or something. Because otherwise, if we say no, even if they go to the Division of State Lands and get approval, our code says they can't do it. So if we said you can't do it unless you get an approval from the Division of State Lands, then we'll consider it, or something like that.
So where does it say you can't do it?
Paragraph A in 150, except as otherwise allowed, the proposed project does not include any grading, excavation, or filling of a wetland or reduction of wetland area on a parcel that has been identified as containing a wetland.
Yeah, so I think the otherwise allowed, because there's allowed in 160, and that includes maintenance activities, and then I think there is,
There is a map error correction on 190 that addresses part of what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
Where it's just incorrectly marked because they didn't fly
Right.
over.
Right, I'm just talking about the mitigation, like, we know it's wetland, we absolutely know it's wetland.
right.
So how do we just open the door for them to be able to get approval to mitigate 1-to-1 somewhere else? That's all I'm.
Yeah, I think it would be in that hardship variance.
Yeah. Okay, so hardship is
Because hardship is identified as, one of the conditions of hardship is, the property would be rendered non-buildable. Like if we don't have a variance for this, it's non-buildable. So we want it to be buildable, we want it to be usable,
Yeah.
provide a route to make that happen.
Well, I get concerned, it says in like paragraph C, hardship variance. Okay, that pretty much
Yeah,
covers
the
it.
council can grant the variance and include
Yeah, that pretty much covered it.
the applicant's exhausted other options to relieve the hardship, and you mitigate impacts to the greatest extent possible, minimize loss of vegetation. So there's a path forward.
Yeah, it's a type 3 process.
Yeah.
And we would put in that additional requirement to restore some restoration part of it, I guess?
I think the state would.
The state would do it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine, that looks good.
Okay. And that is a complicated one.
And those maps that the state have are not very accurate.
They're garbage.
No, and they show the entire boundary of the lake, I think. The Wohink Lake is wetlands and riparian. There's a lot of it that overlaps. And
I
it's-
filed for a permit for a project, and they sent the lady from State Lands, because it was in the wetlands, well, it was 60 feet above Sutton Lake.
Yeah.
And she showed up and she said, well, where are the wetlands at? That's why I tried to tell you on the phone, there isn't any, because she wanted to wait until the wettest part of the year to show up. So it, pushed us back a couple of months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had the same thing happen. I developed the old lumber yard in Florence into our self-storage business. And because 2 feet of the northern boundary was designated wetland in the aerial survey, I had to pay an engineer $5,000. And when I told him what he was going to be doing, I said, you're going to come out, you're going to see a vacant lot with gravel. And, I need an approval that it's not wetlands. And he said, okay, well, what's there? Are there any wetlands, grasses? No. Is there any water? Is there any stream, any pond, any lake? I said, no, there's a vacant lot
Is there a
with
frog?
gravel. And so he came out, and he walked across the lot for 10 minutes and said, you're right, it's not a wetland. And I gave him a check for $5,000.
Yeah.
So, yeah, wow.
This lady, she was like, well, while I'm here, I'm just gonna do some boring and some tests. And she walks over here and she starts boring. And I go, well, you're gonna find wetlands over there. And she goes, oh, really? I go, yeah, that's the drain field.
Anyway,
Well, and we called on a past project that did encroach where it was mapped, and it was soggy. And when I called the state, the guy goes, doesn't sound like it was that, probably doesn't sound like it was over 50 yards, so we don't care. I'm like,
yeah.
You can assess how big the area was over the telephone, and it was pretty clear, he was not gonna drive out there and look at that one. I'm like, I don't even know how to take this, it's a shall not, unless it's not convenient that day, so. I got that determination for free, Larry.
Yeah.
You didn't want to talk about it. So anyway, it is a difficult topic.
We go back to 7.7 and go page by page.
Yeah, which section are you in?
Well, we just started at goal 5 requirements. And we jumped ahead. So we should be back on 7.7 and finish that.
Which is 120? Is that where you're at?
110, but do you have anything you want to
Where
change?
were we?
110, 120? Okay. So we're at 155.2.5.110, goal 5 requirements. And that just changed some abbreviations to spelled out Oregon Department of State Lands and Army Corps of Engineers. And then 120's definitions. Any comments in 120? .130 is determination of significant wetlands. We'll go to 140, protection of wetlands areas. And that section is as it has stood for years, except revision to D2.
On D83 on, what was it? On 140B, I think it is,
B as in boy?
B as in boy.
Yeah.
That citizens' input, it was, I think this is correct, it's the city shall determine which riparian corridor are locally significant. Their opinion was that gives too much power to the city determining what was significant and what wasn't. Just a comment from citizens.
Gotcha. Well, it has to be in accordance with the rules adopted by Oregon Department of State Lands. So it can't be an arbitrary definition the city uses, we've got to follow that. And further down, it would be any change. And I'm with you, I think if we argue there's additional, or it needs to be done by a professional wetland scientist, that's in C. So I don't think it would be a staff opinion, it would have to be a hired professional.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, either the developer or the city's got to have a professional there to make that determination. Does that satisfy the
Yep.
concern? Okay. All right. Any comment on 140?
So I just have a question. Is there a Dune City local wetland inventory and riparian inventory? Is there such a thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Section 150, additional standards for review. I think 150B is a little confusing. Except as otherwise allowed in 155.2.5, 160, which is the next section. Proposed project will not include any development or filling of land within 50 feet of the boundary of a wetland that has been identified only on the LWI map or by determination, but not an approved jurisdictional delineation. So, same question?
It's more words.
Yeah.
And the definition takes you back to the Oregon Department of State Lands.
So it can be on a map, but not on an approved jurisdictional delineation. Wouldn't that be a map? I just can't figure out what the but not an approved, it used to say but not approved delineation. Now it says not approved jurisdictional delineation, and I'm not sure what that's supposed to clarify. Gary Darnell on that?
No, it's been on that page.
No, it was 140, 160, yeah. No. There's 160.
Where does it keep the one? I think those are old numbers.
Yeah, I'm not on a page now, I'm looking at section. Yeah. So, that, does that make sense to you, Pam? I mean, because this is going to come across your desk long before it comes to city council. as part of an application, and I can't, it's like, who's on first?
When it comes to the wetlands, we don't know, we fall back on the state.
Okay, Mr. Developer, does that sentence make sense to you?
I'm not a developer.
Mr. Builder?
It is confusing.
Yeah, who do you call with a sentence that names three things, but says the last one, but not the last one? Where do you start for that determination? Go ahead, Rapunzel.
I don't get that last part of the sentence either, to tell you the truth. But
Okay,
so you might change it to, wetland that has been identified on the LWI map or by a DSL determination.
is it only DSL, or can it also be the, what did the other section say, the environmental?
It's DSL that has
Okay.
jurisdiction over the wetlands
Okay.
and the maps.
And then it jives with the definition, because it goes back to DSL, and then just just put a period where the comma is,
Yeah,
and take that but not and approve jurisdictional delineation. I don't even know what it's supposed to
I'm
apply.
not sure what that means either.
Okay. Because as a local jurisdiction, we haven't been making these determinations. We've been following that map or the advice of an expert.
Well, judicial delineation definition says it's a map. So,
All right, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right. 160, allowed activities within wetland protection area. So existing signs are okay. Following activities, restoration, rehabilitation, cutting, removal of trees, opposed hazards, all these are all existing terms. And then 8, we had the comment about 8, installation of public park facilities by the city, including bicycle and hiking pathways, covered overlooks, picnic areas, education signage, and similar park facilities.
I think that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, I think, Jeannie, this was your comment. It was, those would be allowed uses, not approved uses, if that makes sense. They would be allowed if they went through the same process. And we covered the process earlier, that we weren't making ourselves exempt from any process, but a trail or an overlook would be an allowed use. But it's not a blanket approval to build anything, it's that it could be allowed in that area. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, are you speaking to me?
Yeah, it was your comment. You had a comment earlier about that we were granting ourselves permission to build a bike trail in the wetlands. This isn't permission to build anything, this is allowed uses that could be designed, reviewed, and approved. They still go through all the same steps. So if it
Well, I still don't think it's a good idea because it's a protected area personally, and certainly, you may disagree, you often disagree with me.
Well, I would just comment that, you know, sometimes wetland areas are dunes, pond, dunes, pond, dunes, pond. And there are wonderful reasons to be hiking and enjoying that area. And this would give us the option of being able to put pathways to keep people out of the sensitive areas.
Right, and it doesn't have to be pavement or anything, it
No, it
can
doesn't
be
have
bark chips and,
And
I
because
understand what you're saying, Larry, but we have a lot of lovely areas to explore. That seems odd, this protected area, suddenly you need to open it up. My fear was that it was being done more for the grant money than really for what it could do for the community, because I know that was the driving factor under Ms. Mills.
Well, that could be determined by the planning commission. They could look at it and say, why are we doing this and does it meet the compelling public interest?
And-
Because it seems like, you know, we'll have the potential where people are going there anyway, and many feet walking where they shouldn't walk, sometimes a trail can be a good thing. So for example, I'm thinking of Darlingtonia Park, up there north of Florence, where they have all those plants. They built a boardwalk to avoid people trampling those plants.
Right,
And
and
that's
that's
wet-
very important.
And that's
I agree with
wetland.
you.
Yeah, so I just think that this isn't a blanket approval, as the mayor indicates. It's just a process where if the question comes up, if we do want to have a public park or feature, trail, or educational signage, that we could do it with approval of the planning.
It's just, it's a delicate area.
It is, definitely.
Yeah, there are, I was told, the previous city administrator was the one who talked about special species there. It's a very unique area, and I don't think it would be great to bring a lot of foot traffic through. Where just the locals knew about the trail and would go back and forth. That was great. We used it that way for years, and it wasn't a problem. There were always people who might abuse it. There were people who would go in and shoot guns and that sort of thing, which was a problem. Thought it was a great place for target practice. So, you always have to, I understand it's a special area, and I'm just pointing out, we have a different history with it than any of you do. And I know it's been many things through the years, but I would, I would like that it continue to be protected because it is a very unique area.
Since I'm new here, I hope you'll tell me where it is.
Well, it's basically, it used to start, it's changed, but if you know where Susan lives, it started right behind her house, and and you could walk through to the creek on the North Beach side, you could walk all the way, as kids, we'd walk over to Darlings.
Right.
They'd walk over here, and you still can do that. And, but then it got shut down and used as different things. Our parents became concerned because a lot of local boys like to go there and shoot guns and things, so they said, be very careful, there's no shooting going on. So, there's some problems, but it's a very unique area that we used to enjoy and the locals knew about. And I think it'd be better if we weren't inviting everyone and their brother to come, because it is a unique area, and I think it would be more protected by just the locals using it than inviting the public and opening it up like a park facility. That's just my opinion.
So, to be clear, this is for all wetland protection areas. There's no specific parcel identified, but I know the parcel you're speaking because the city purchased it.
Right.
And there is no grant. Jamie left over 3 years ago. There is no grant money. There's no pressure to build a project. This would make that an allowed use if we ever got to that. I'm with you, Larry. If we ever got to that, I think it would be appropriate to put the people where there's minimal impact and delineate that if we ever got to that.
And I think you should, ask, the property owners in those areas that's gonna be affected the most. Because I actually heard about this trail and came and talked to the city and, we asked a bunch of neighbors. Everybody was for it, and I went and asked every one of my neighbors, and nobody had ever talked to them.
Yeah.
So the people that are gonna be affected the most by it,
And
kind of like the Florence and their little park thing, the trail down there, that's just basically turned into a homeless camp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People
Well-
parking in the parking lot, living in RVs, and
yeah.
it's just
And this
open up
city
something.
parcel specifically, we have rights at both ends and not in the middle. We thought we had rights, and
Yeah,
when we start talking about it, it's like the neighbors have rights from each other from the court settlement. It didn't grant anything for public access easement anyway, so that's been shelved. I mean, there's no
it's kind of a
proposed,
moot point anyway.
there's no proposed project, right? But this is in general. This is
Right. I know
in
what
a
you're saying.
wetlands area.
I
You
just-
could build a viewpoint or something.
I just
as
think
an
if you do
allowed
something like
use.
that, you should talk to the neighbors that want to
Absolutely.
live together, see what, so they know what's going on.
I agree.
I just hate to see a bunch of, people, homeless people in there going to somebody's house and robbing them and getting their stuff out of there.
Yeah. All right, any other comments on 160? That takes us to 170, those prohibited activities within wetland protection area.
So I have a question about number 2.
Yeah.
It just says, or installation of a water line to a lake. So prohibited areas within a wetland protection area. That seems to me like, I hope the frontage of every property on the lake is a wetland protection area, but how would you get your water out of the lake?
No, except for
Except,
perimeter mowing, fire protection, or the installation of the water line to the
okay, I
lake.
get you.
That's the allowed in that.
Very good.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're right.
That's good, thank you.
Yeah, that was the exception to that. And then 3, to some extent, covers that concern about non-native or ornamental vegetation. And dumping, that's where it ends. And then we're in 180, which is notification and coordination with the state. And I think that's just an update of the name. Went from division up to department of. And then 190, map error corrections and hardship variances.
Might I ask a question about the area right now? I went over there recently, and I noticed it looks different. The wire fencing is down, there's asphalt been laid, and are you people part of those changes, or is that the people who live there who did that? It looks quite different than it did just this time last year.
It's not a city project, to my knowledge. I think the part in the middle, if the there is the same parcels adjacent to the city parcel we're talking about, that's private property, and they have, the lawsuit was about drivable access to one of the parcels across the other. So that would be a private drive, not a city
Are
street.
they taking down the chain link fence that was there? I'm happy about that, because that used to be where people could walk through. It was all chained off where nobody could even get through there because of the landowners who now are in that area that were never there when we were children. I mean, that was all, just we could walk over to Darlings, over to
Yeah.
North Beach, and they enjoyed walking over to Westlake. And it was always open for foot traffic. I'm not sure it's appropriate for other things, because it was very marshy. You know, times have changed. Maybe it's not as marshy as it used to be, but there's times of the year when there's a lot of water there. And there was a reason why it's just, you know, used certain times of the year and in certain ways. But it's a very old trail. It goes back to Native Americans using it, the early settlers in the area. You know, my dad, my granddad, everybody used to use it before cars. You know, it was the way people got back and forth.
I think that's all private work between those two properties.
Yeah.
Any comments on 190?
Just the one I hear about should be named and not will on paragraph C.
C.
It says the council will, the council may grant variance.
Yeah, I gotcha. I agree. Does that make sense, everybody? C under hardship variances?
Yeah, it should be may instead of will.
Yes. Even though it says will, if you meet all the requirements, but yeah, it's still something that's reviewed. It's a type 3, which means it requires a public hearing and a meeting and a discussion. So yeah, that should say, I'd go back and mark. I agree. Any other comments in that? Section 190. If not, that takes us to 155.2.6, riparian overlay zone. think this whole section is directly out of Oregon Administrative. Either ORS or OAR. I don't think any of these are local terms. These are all regulatory.
Change from 140A.
Okay. Any comments in 110, 1 to 20?
In 120, under the riparian corridor boundary on page 82,
Mm-hmm.
it says, is an imaginary line a certain distance upland from the top of the bank?
Yes.
I think that should be a defined, not an imaginary. So is it 20 feet, is it 5 feet,
50 feet.
50 feet?
Well, it's 50 feet from the top of bank, adjacent to a stream with an annual stream flow of less than 1,000 cubic feet per second. So small streams, and the state's got a whole picture, you know, here's the stream, here's the bank, plus 50 feet each side of it. So you can't disturb that within 50 feet of that stream.
I think that is kind of misleading where it says an imaginary line.
Yeah, that is.
I would say calculated or measured.
The state's definition says imaginary.
Yeah,
Is it
because they don't physically paint a line or,
No, they don't.
yeah. But I'm with Rapunzel, I think that's right from the state's definition.
Okay.
So yeah, there's nothing out there in real life, you gotta figure out where the top of the bank is and then measure back 50 feet.
All right.
I hear Rod Sterling's voice in my head, imagine if you will. Someone's figured out where the top of the bank is.
I'm going to imagine from low water.
Any other comments in that section? And top of bank, when you get to that definition, top of bank gets more specific about how they do it. It's at the 2-year storm event, you know, they can give you a flow number generally. So that you can plot that and make it less imaginary. All right. Can we go to 130, determination of local significant riparian corridor? Any comments on 130? We'll go to 140. Protection of riparian corridor, is that where you had?
That's the one that's written down here.
Yeah.
It wants this definition, it says it might be useful for this restriction in the definition on 155.2.6.120. It looks to me like it's already been,
Yeah, I think,
looks like to me
I
it's
think we're
already
good.
been.
Okay.
So I was just
gotcha.
reading. Here it says, it looks like it's already in there.
Yes. So F in 140, F. That's a pretty good example of the language, Susan. Removal of non-native vegetation and replacement with native species shall be allowed. This is in wetlands, but something similar would be appropriate in the dunes in that section. And it does say, must comply with chapter 154, the or soil. Yeah, so we'll have to make sure that the terms agree when we get to 154.
Consistency.
Yeah. Any other comments in 1.140? Number 150, prohibited activities and repairing corridors.
The parentheses C, what does that indicate? Oh, from section C above, I see. Never mind.
You good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any comments on 150?
Question. Just
Go ahead.
on 160, is that where you are right now?
No, 150 still.
Oh, sorry.
And Larry, similar language, excavation, grading, fill, stream alteration, diversion, removal of native is not allowed except for fire protection and installation of water lines to the lake. Any comments on 150? We'll go to 160 and go ahead, Rapunzel.
So just in paragraph B,
Yep.
let's see, the third line, it says a mapping error has occurred and the error has been verified by.
Yeah.
It should be by DSL.
Yes. Right. It's not verified by anybody. It ends with a period. That makes sense.
Paragraph C, we could drop the word will again, go back to may.
Yeah. I agree.
Begin and see with the may will thing.
Yeah, that's what it is. It comes from may instead of will.
Well, you have the same thing with B too. B and C.
Gotcha. And B, make it may instead of will as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Next page just says item 5, loss of vegetative cover shall be minimized, and that takes us to 155.3, design standards. Okay.
Access and circulation.
Okay. So there's a lot of stricken language in the design standards. no proposed revisions on the first page. Does anybody have any issues with this? Just the headings and stuff.
It looks like it refers it, I think, to the next section.
Yeah, 155.3.0 is design standard administration, and it's a whole new .100, new section.
It's on the second page.
Yeah, all the old language is stricken and then there's new language, much simpler version on the next page. Any comments? We'll go. 155.3.1, access and circulation. Is that where you have Gary comment?
Yeah. Section is not, is overly complicated and not needed, it says. Suggest using Lake County's code.
Yeah.
That depends on, that states that the streets need to be public and engineer. The streets need to be done by an engineer. And the city's transportation safety. And these sections are done that, so there's a whole bunch of comments on the sections.
All right. Where do you start? 110.
110.
J.
J4.
All right, so the memo from the planner starts at J in 110. 110A, intent and purpose, has been simplified. Does anybody have a hardship with that? Or want to propose a change? So I have a comment on D, traffic study requirements. We've had comments from the public about some proposed projects, some future projects, and 3 is increase in site traffic generated by 300 average daily trips or more. I don't think there'll ever be a project in Dune City that generates 300 daily trips. That's a pretty big number as a starting point to do a traffic study. So if you had like the current project, you know, a dozen or 20 lots with a single, potentially a single access as it exists today, without an analysis, that's not 300 trips, but that could be a problem. I mean, without somebody looking at circulation and the turn movements, you know, where are they all coming and going, where do they make left turns and right turns? It's left turns that always cause all the problems. So 300 is a big number. That would be about 100 homes if it was single-family homes, you know, just traditional single-family home construction. So that's a big project. I mean, the trip generation manual is a national standard, so they don't care, frankly, where you live or what part of the state you're in. They're going to say, here's typical trip generation. So that's a lot of homes to get to that point. So we have a whole lot of words here that will probably never come up unless we adjust and say.
Do you have a better number for that place there?
You know, instead of saying average daily trips, I think we should look at like when there's single point of access, you know, anything greater than like
a percentage?
15 homes or something with a single point of access needs to be reviewed, because that's when you start getting into, do you need secondary access? And, you know, a lot of communities have standards, just blanket, like, no dead end or cul-de-sac longer than 600 feet, you've got to have a secondary, because you end up with these quarter-mile long blind drives, you know, with 10 houses on them and no way to get out if there's a fire or an accident or a problem. So I think we should look at a smaller number, because it's a simple traffic analysis, that the analysis is not that hard. You know, we're not talking freeway interchanges here, we're talking about residential, I don't know, you know, a dozen homes, 15 homes, that's a big project around here. You also don't see 15 homes being absorbed in a year from one subdivision, like you do in a big city, so they're gonna get built one at a time or two at a time, and it may take 10 years to build out, so that helps, but I just think, these are great, you know, 20,000 pound gross vehicle weight, 10 or more per day. That's gonna be a business, that's an office warehouse, you're not gonna see that in any residential development ever, other than during construction, and we don't count trash trucks, and we don't count UPS trucks, you know, right? Those are just background noise for local deliveries and,
Well,
so-
if you had a development with 15 homes, would the number be 60?
I think you could just say 15 homes,
15 homes,
instead of
okay.
triggering it with ADT, because that implies you've already done some analysis.
Okay,
But homes are easy, everybody understands that. If there's 15 new addresses, I mean, 15 is a good starting place, or,
so it would read an increase in site traffic volume generation by the potential development of 15 homes or more?
yeah, something like that.
Okay. And I think you're right, I mean, the homes could be built over time, so you want to say the potential
Right, if you've got a subdivision with 15 lots,
of
do
15
that,
homes or more.
do that analysis up front, because it's gonna tell you when you probably need a secondary access, right? They build the first 3, it's not gonna, they're all gonna fit on that intersection.
So do
but-
we want to say lots instead of homes?
Well, lots don't generate any traffic, I mean, homes do, so that's
Right,
part of the
But
magic
if you
is,
want it done and they don't have homes there, they're not going to do it then until
Well, you
the
can
homes
say
are
the
built.
potential of homes.
Yeah,
Until you get
good.
it built, there's still lots.
subdivision map with 15 or greater, or something like that would be my suggestion.
So they're asking for a subdivision approval, and if there's 15 homes, okay? you got it.
Yes, so they're lots.
Yeah, they're lots.
Yeah.
You could say homes or lots, either way.
Yeah, now, to throw another wrench in the works, we see a lot of partitions where we'll see a big lot with, you know, 2 small lots carved out and a big remainder, and then a year later, 2 more carved out. And that potentially never triggers anything, but 10 years from now, 12 years, whatever it takes, you know, there could be 15 homes. And at that point, it's too late to decide you need a secondary access, right? Once it's all mapped out and being built. So,
Well, let's say the language, the potential of 15 homes or more, you could say, well, you're carving out 3 lots, but you've got a big piece of acreage here, that potentially could be the other 12.
That's a safe way to do it.
Yeah.
Right, you're right. If it's 20 acres.
But I mean, I like what
1 acre
Susan
minimum,
said,
you
you could
could
say
presume,
potential of 15 homes or buildable lots.
or greater,
Yeah.
you know?
No, never mind.
You okay with that, Rapunzel?
The word potential is problematic. As
Well-
as far as criteria goes, so it's like 15 or more homes or,
But if it's 1 acre minimum, you know, when this code's done, we're a 1 acre minimum. So if you have 15 acre parcel that you plan to develop, we're gonna assume there's 15 lots. Give us
No.
some sort of analysis.
No,
Yes. Per
no.
code, no, hey, let me finish. That's the assumption. Now, if you do the analysis and say, but I got 2 acres of wetlands, and I got 4 acres of 27% slopes, so I'm probably gonna net 7,
But you've got to take into consideration for roads and utilities, so if you got 15 acres, there's no way you can build 15 houses.
you can with private roads.
Would it be better
And
just to
utilities.
set the acreage then? You're building access to, or into your interior space of more than 15 acres?
That could be just one house though, right?
Well, what if a future.
Well, but then the analysis is really easy. They go, I'm gonna own 15 acres with one house.
Right.
But there's no analysis.
What if they receive approval for 2 houses per acre? See, I mean,
That's not allowed under the.
I understand it's not allowed now, but what
Right.
if it changed?
Well, and there are existing smaller lots out there that
There
could be
are.
incorporated into a, you know, a land purchase, so.
Well, you're right, the 300 doesn't work for anybody.
No, that's a big number.
Yeah, so we just
I mean,
have to
that's-
find another
That's,
way
you
to
know,
say.
that's a big subject.
I thought in our standards, we allowed for duplexes to be built on 1 acre minimums. I believe that's in there.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So there you have.
So
That's correct.
if that's in there, there's potentially four vehicles for a unit.
They,
but-
duplexes on, in the trip generation manual generate less traffic than a single family home, but yeah, they,
Yeah.
I mean, but that's my point, 300 is huge, I mean, that's a,
No, I agree.
I don't think there's any perfect solution because we're trying to figure
No.
out every potential
Right.
situation that could happen. But I like Susan's idea of just saying potential of 15 homes or buildable lots. And that could be determined by the planning group. They can say, well, you're landlocked here, you can't go past 12, it's impossible. But, oh, you're not landlocked, you could build 40 more homes a year. So, yeah, we have to have a traffic information study.
yeah. I mean, just looking around, there's a lot of spots where I wish there was secondary access, and I think it's creep, right? It starts out, there were just a couple of homes, and then there was a home at the end of the road, and the next thing you know, there's 7 of them in between the, you know, the house at the end of the road and the one in the middle of the road, and it's like, oops, too late now,
Woking, there's 25 lots up there,
at the end of the road,
and there is one way out.
right?
And some of those lots are like a cliff.
Yeah.
The one across the street, the one I built, it has about 15 feet of flat ground and
Yep.
it drops right off. I can't believe somebody bought it, but somebody
I know.
did. They paid,
I think all but 2 lots up there have sold.
yeah.
It makes no sense.
15 acres.
Something like that.
I mean, I think you could build on it, but at least,
I mean, because on a smaller project, the analysis is pretty simple.
But if you
Right,
say,
so we're not talking about $60,000 traffic study for something that small, but,
if you say the potential of 15 homes, that means, you know, that could take into consideration what Rich is saying in terms of duplexes.
right.
So a home is that's two homes.
You're right,
So-
2 units,
So
yeah,
I'd
I
say
wouldn't
the
do it.
potential of 15 homes or buildable lots, like what Susan was suggesting, kind of covers it, at least it's a starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause
Otherwise,
otherwise-
let's build them in phases and
15 buildable lots, because like you're saying, by the time you take road structure out of that,
Yeah,
open space.
and that's why I bring it up. We have a whole lot of words about traffic studies, but at 380 T,
Yeah.
You're never gonna
you
see
probably
it.
never see a traffic analysis, right? And then we do have some spots where the left turns are a little tricky.
To Councilor Olson's point, do you want to leave it at homes or residential units?
I would say units, right? So duplexes, if it's a duplex, it's 2 units. It's one structure, but it's 2 units, right? It's 2 separate residential units if we saw something like that.
Well, I thought we were gonna go with 15 parcels, but
Or 15 units, whatever. Yeah, that way you cover either.
Yeah, that's a good
If
idea.
you end up with duplexes on a couple of them.
15 residential units or 15
yeah.
buildable lots, right?
Yeah,
Because you don't want to get 15 duplexes down in a spot and end up with 65 vehicles in there and no place for them to get out.
yeah. And I think on a smaller scale, that the traffic analysis is simple, but waiting until you get to 300 trips, you know.
300 is, I totally agree, is completely excessive for here. But rather than basing the traffic volume on houses, shouldn't it be on vehicles?
Well, houses, there's a straight number for trip generation. So if you say it's a duplex, there's a number. If you say it's a single family home, there's a number. They're all standard numbers, so that will drive that. What's that?
Where do you get those numbers?
The ITE trip generation manual. I'm glad you asked.
You don't have one?
You can access that online these days. The International Traffic Engineers Trip Generation Manual, latest edition. So yeah, there is basically a standard guide for the United States that has, you know, small restaurant with drive-through window, apartments, schools, single-family homes. So there's numbers that everybody uses for those, so, and then really unusual uses, you would go out and count cars, but we're basically all residential, so it's very straightforward analysis. That's why I bring it up. Getting to 300 is a really big residential project.
That's way too big.
Yeah.
So couldn't we just find a number or a percentage, or say 15 houses from that manual, and then put that in here?
Yeah, if you want the actual estimated trip generation,
A baseline that would trigger a TIS?
45 trips?
I'll look it up. I'll see if I can look it up.
Oh, it'd have to be a potential of 45 trips.
Yeah, so it would say something like 50 trips or more, or 15 units, which would be the same math.
That's the problem, you're gonna start, and in order to get the number of trips, you're gonna have to assume how many
Right. How
buildable
many
lots,
units?
and then put a duplex on each one. So if you had 15 lots, that's 30 residential units, and then you go to the traffic study,
Yeah.
and that's gonna produce a certain number, so why take that second step, just stick with residential lots? Or, you
It's
know,
an easy trigger, right, and then you
residential
get the
units,
analysis.
yeah. Because that way you don't have to do the secondary math to figure out how many trips. Well, is this a single-family home or a duplex? You just, when you run into 15, you're there. Whether it's a duplex or otherwise.
I mean, to get 300, you'd have to have an average of 150 housing development.
Something like that, yeah, and I worry more about when secondary access is needed. You know, we've had a lot of conversation about how difficult is it to get a second way out of a spot. And that's what the numbers really drive, when everybody's only got one choice. And it's either an emergency vehicle, a fire, a storm, something, one tree's down and you've got stranded people. With nowhere to go, so. But I'll get you a number, we'll see, you know.
You could say an increase in site volume generation by the potential of 15 residential units, or call Duke and have his chainsaw come over.
It's in the CCNR.
I've done it before.
Yeah. Yeah, one of those smash window for chainsaw. So anyway, I think we could use some analysis sometime on smaller scale projects, and 300 is a big number. But we haven't historically seen a lot of traffic analysis, and in some of the access it shows, you know, it's difficult, there's no secondary, and the primary is poor visibility.
I'd like to see us move on and not have to come back to this.
Okay,
So
oh, I'm good with the 15, if you're
I
good.
just say
I'm-
15.
Yeah, no, I like that.
15 residences.
Okay.
Can I go to 4, since we're doing 3? Can we,
Yes.
instead of state highway, can we do main artery or something? Not everything goes to a state.
Well, that
highway.
was a number going, that was, I don't even think we need 4, because
Well, I'm good with taking it out, but I just, when
I
I
don't
saw
believe the
state
city
highway, not
limits touch
everything
state
goes.
highway.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that's why I
It's
said.
strip county land at Clear Lake and Canary.
Because you want main arteries, anything increasing volume, not the state highway.
Yeah.
But I don't know how we know that either, unless we.
No, right, you really need number 3, right? Until you, something that triggers that estimate and that count, and then
But I
typical
realize
analysis.
Susan's idea to change it from state highway to just main arteries would be great.
Yeah, but the main artery would connect to a county road, and to get to 20%, you gotta call county and say, what's the average daily traffic on the county road? And I think if you're triggering it by 15 homes, you already have the analysis, and as part of that, they would estimate, like, the easy routes to turn left, the longer routes to turn right, 20% will go right, 80% will go left to get out to 101 or whatever. You know, you make some estimations on which direction.
I think
they
they're
go.
doing that count right now. They've got,
Yes, they are, the tubes are out, they do that pretty much annually. Yeah.
So what was the determination on 4?
Wow.
There's a traffic study being done right now.
yeah, we know, yeah.
Annual counts, yeah.
How about we change this from the state highway just to from main arteries?
Yeah, that was Susan's suggestion, but an increase in peak hour volume at any point. Peak hours, rush hour, we don't have one. Honestly, there's an awful lot of retired folks.
Why don't we just leave state highway in there and just add?
You could probably strike it.
Or arterials, or primary arterials.
Well, our peak hours are just different because they're retired folks.
Well, I think when you plot it, you won't have a peak. You go
Dinner time at Darling.
for because I think 1, 2, and 3 probably get you is what's going to trigger the analysis. To know if you had an increase in peak hour by 20%, you'd already have to do a traffic analysis.
That's true.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole lot of data to collect, because you gotta collect like 12 hours, 12-hour days to see where the peak hour is, and then, because we don't have, we're not proposing commercial
Well, I
zoning.
thought this was in here because of some state requirement.
No,
It said state highway, so I was assuming that the state wanted to know about this. But if they don't care, I could see it's just scratching up.
I think we could scratch 4 and 5. I like 6, that's where we have difficult driveways and site distances.
Well, the state's gonna have their own standards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No matter whether you're in the city or not, they're gonna say if you're gonna increase the traffic by X%, you're gonna put in a turn lane and everything else, so.
So were we scratching 4 and 5?
I would, and I would leave a 6 and 7. Because the 7, that internal traffic, that would be part of the things that generate when you need a secondary access.
So if we do that, we're just simply changing the number and
Yeah,
getting rid of 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7 becomes 4 and 5.
that makes sense to everybody?
Everybody agree?
And the very last, after 7, that last paragraph, it says you would coordinate with ODOT, but we don't connect any ODOT streets. I think you need to coordinate with Lane County because Clear Lake and Canary and Pacific are all county roads.
Well, do we not have any property that can turn it out to 101?
It's just the stuff that fronts it, the seaplane base and the RV park
Well, I mean, the Mitchells.
that are on 101. Yeah, those are the only ones that have driveways
Right, but
or,
if somebody lived like south of Mitchell's and they wanted to come out on 101, wouldn't we still do this language?
then they would be going to the state, but yeah, everything internal, you're connected to a county road.
Well, I think that you only need to consult with ODOT if you're doing something with 101.
Right.
Not otherwise, and this seems like
Exactly.
all-inclusive.
Right,
So I would say.
so maybe it's both, say,
It
if,
must be prepared by an engineer licensed by the state of Oregon, period.
yeah,
The rest of it doesn't belong there except for 101, right?
and that's even a given. If you're trying to propose a new driveway on 101, you're not getting a permit from the city, you're getting that from the state.
It's true.
So I don't even think we have to state it, you can't get
Right.
past go.
You can't get it, yeah,
Is everybody okay with that? We just say licensed by the state of Oregon?
period.
Oregon licenses civil engineers and traffic or transportation engineers, so either or can do the impact analysis. All right. All right, that takes us to E. Oh dear. It's 5 minutes to 8, yeah. You want to park right there?
That's what Parker.
Let's park right there. All right. Okay. We will close the public hearing at 8:56. 8:57, sorry, 7:57, thank you. We will continue this hearing on August 5th, 2026, at the 6 PM city council meeting at 155.3.1 access and circulation E. Takes us to for the good of the order, Duke.
I'd just like to add to what the mayor was talking about, the Bayou Watermelon contest. It was a lot of fun. And I do think if we do it again, I think we could easily do 24.
I do
We
too.
certainly had the kids there, the participants.
Well, easy is a relative term.
Yeah.
We need Susan to have an assistant. But I agree.
Yeah.
That was, you know, probably the funnest two meetings we've had were when the kids came for, if I were mayor for the day, and pie eating and watermelon. Because the kids were involved,
Yeah. Very nice.
yeah. And I lost what page I was on, Susan. Before we move on. Never mind, got it, found it. Anything else? Oh, Susan, anything you want to add?
No, I think the contest was a lot of fun, and it was great having all the kids there.
Rich? Nope. Chris?
Around here?
Larry?
Just, I want to express my appreciation to our city staff and city manager. I think you guys are hardworking and we appreciate your efforts. And I'm sure not everything you do we see. But I want you to know that I think we appreciate what you're doing and the efforts you make. And I think you're all working hard in the best interest of the city and the citizenry. And it's hard for us to appreciate everything you do because we don't see what happens behind the scenes and the daily toil that's involved. So I just want to express my appreciation for what you're doing.
And Larry used the term city manager. Traditionally, and this is just a tradition, Oregon says small organizations have city administrator, big organizations, and there's no number.
So my appreciation to the city administrator.
I like city manager better because everybody goes, what is a city administrator? It sounds like a clerical position in some cases. And so, is everybody okay calling him city manager?
I'm a city manager.
I do the same thing. I go back and forth.
Change the name tag now.
I just want business.
But when you run out,
It's fine, either one you prefer.
my old boss's license plate was city man, because he was a city manager, and so only people that worked in the city knew that, but anyway, it was kind of a weird license plate, but, because yeah, it
Well,
gets
see,
used
if
interchangeably.
you're the city administrator and you don't want to talk to somebody, tell them to talk to the city manager.
I read this HR thing that said, when you can't give people raises, give them a better title, it's almost as effective. So maybe we should save this for his first review. And upgrade your title, so, but I like city manager better too, so. All right, with that, is it 8 PM? Well, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'm gonna move to adjourn.
I need a second.
Second.
That was Susan and Chris. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.